Do you actually have to be on cocaine to be on this podcast?
It's a great day to be a Wildcat!
Cocaine.
Surfing.
What's up, everybody? You are listening to yet another edition of Cocaine Willie. I am your commissioner, Bob Trollsby, and as always, I'm joined by my co-hosts, the good chef Andre Napier and Fireball Matt Marchesini. And today we're going to be previewing the matchup with the Baylor Bears, who are, spoiler alert, not very good this season. Baylor this year, I mean, where do we begin? Last year was a bit of a disappointment for them, coming off of a Big 12 championship run and a Sugar Bowl win over Lane Kiffin's Ole Miss Rebels. Going 6-7 last year after losing to a very good Air Force team. I would say, looking back on it, they're pretty good, even though they lost to Army by like 3 scores last weekend. In the Armed Forces Bowl, they lost in that game. But they made a change at defensive coordinator. They were picked to be 6th out of 14 teams in the preseason poll for the Big 12 this year. And they're now currently in a 4-way tie for 9th place, which essentially they've lost most of the tiebreakers to those other ninth place teams. So they're basically in 12th place out of 14 teams in the Big 12. And they somehow had 8 home games and have gone 1-6 at home this season. And they're 2-0 on the road, though. So if they have an opportunity to win this weekend, I would say it's because they're road dogs. These guys are road dogs. What do you guys think about Baylor this season? What do you think is going on in Waco right now?
Man, it's tough to say that. I mean, they lost 4 straight at the end of last year, which was really, all sparked by K-State. Because going into that K-State game last year, what did we beat them? 38-3? I think that was the final score. We skunked them. I heard us described as a ball of razor blades, or a ball of knives or something like that. And we sparked off the epic fall of Dave Aranda from his Big 12 title to where he's at now. They lost Blake Shafen for a little bit of this season, which I think had some part in it, of them not having the cohesion. And they're playing a lot of young cats, man. They got they're starting a freshman at running back. Their O-line's kind of amuck with, a lot of freshmen there. It's just, and they're lacking playmakers. I'm from what I've seen, it's tough, man. It's tough to see Baylor down like this. Not really, but it's one of those things, that you thought that they were going to be one of those stalwarts going into this new Big 12, and who knows where they're going to end up if they don't make changes the right way.
I mean, I'm thoroughly enjoying this disaster. I don't know. It is interesting because you think a couple years ago with how Blake Shapen was doing as a freshman there. This was a Baylor program that looked like it was on kind of another level, especially with a coach who was hot off the national championship from LSU, and Dave Aranda. And it really has just taken kind of an interesting turn of sorts. So I what I'll say about this, at least from the K-State perspective, is you have to go into this game very similarly to like the Houston game and know that Baylor on the stat sheets and you look at anything, I know Parker Fleming put out a graphic and it had K-State winning this game 95% of the time. But you have to go in. It's a business trip. I mean, it's not a trip, but you know what I mean, and you have to just play really good football. You have to play good football this weekend. And don't look ahead. We all know what's the week after. But you can't look ahead. Baylor's played well on the road. They've shown toughness, especially in like the Utah game, even though that was at home. Like, this is a team that has shown some competitiveness this season. So you cannot overlook them no matter what at this point.
I think it's very similar. We've had games on our schedule this year. I know I brought this up in the group chat earlier today, but it's one that Baylor's going to have circled for how we beat them bad last year. Their backs are in the corner. If they want to even sniff bowl eligibility, they got to win out. But their backs are against the wall. They're going to fight for it, and it's not their Super Bowl, but we can't go in, like you said, we can't go overlooking them, but they're going to have this game circled. They're going to have energy for this one, especially for how we did them last year. So Oklahoma State, Missouri, these are two tests where that team has this game circled from what we did to them last year. Can we resolve, the woes that we've had against teams that have had us circled? I hope we can do it this week.
The one thing I will say to that is one, with Baylor, you would have thought they would have had that juice going into the last matchup against Texas that they may ever have, and they lost that 38-6 earlier this season at home in Waco. And we've come to find out that this Oklahoma State team that we lost to and the Missouri team that we lost to are both two top 20 teams. Those are two very, very solid units that going into those matchups, we probably didn't have enough tape, honestly, with Missouri. And they looked pretty dismal in that matchup against Middle Tennessee, where they kind of played with their food a little bit that prior week. This is different. This is a Baylor team that's proven to not be very good at all. And the only two teams they've beaten in Big 12 play are newcomers, which says a lot to me.
But I mean, what do they have to have some qualities that make you somewhat nervous, right? I mean, it's just in these kind of games, for me, there's always something. Blake Chafin he torched us as a freshman. I mean, he still eight touchdowns, 2 interceptions on the season. He's got a good amount of passing yards for a guy that's missed like 2 weeks of the season, 3 weeks of the season, and was hobbled in the games that he came back from. He's got the arm talent. He's got the skill. Now, can people step up around him? Can the freshmen, find a way? I'm just not sure that they can, but I pause at the thought of us as a 95% chance of winning this, just outright, play it 100 times, we're going to win 95 times. I can't buy into that. It's a Big 12 game. They've got Big 12 talent. Can we bury them? I don't know. I need to see it.
Okay. Well, so if anybody does follow Parker Fleming at Stats of War on Twitter, the advanced stats preview has a lot of blue for K-State and a lot of red for Baylor. Stats, analytics. We know that's the big word, the buzzword these days. But just some highlights. So, some highlights here. Things like net points per drive. We're like the 7th best team in the country for that, by the way. That's like a pretty big deal, right? Who do we got? Patrick Mahomes at quarterback? No. But there's a lot of red on the Baylor side. Like offensive success rate, 38% of their drives result in points. Like 103rd in the country. That's bad. K-State's is 45%, by the way, 24th in the country. If anybody does not follow him, take a look at this damn graph, because this game does show that if you look at the stats and the analytics, this game should not be close. That's the scary part. Like, I'm not going to go into this and be like, yeah, we're going to beat this team 55-0. But right now, with how we've looked at home, I definitely put that into consideration as well. I think this is going to be a great crowd on Saturday. Looks like the weather's going to be great. 2 o'clock game. You're going to get everybody. I'm pretty convinced we're going to have a great crowd. But this is the type of team that I think this Baylor team coming into here is going to be a test for K-State, but it's a test of can we put everything together and just get a win? Let's just maybe be a little relaxed in this game. Maybe pull some starters in the fourth. It's that type of game. Legitimately, can we copy the playbook for the TCU game or the Houston game? And if we can do that, that's a huge win for us. I kind of want to look up at the K-State Houston, the K-State TCU graphs to see, but this is kind of a little bit of a.
For me, I think this is what I'll say about this. Baylor's offense, what I'm about to say is going to sound crazy, but I think it's a good warm-up into what we're going to see versus Kansas, because they run a lot of like these stretch runs, a lot of veer motions with their wide receivers, trying to get them on runs, and it's not Kansas at all. It's not Kansas, but it does have a lot of the same, elements, a lot of the bones to what Kansas does. So having this right before Kansas, I think is a good thing. Defensively, I think they're a little bit better defensively than, the stats would say. That what UCF did to them at the beginning of that game was it was very cruel. So the stats are not going to be friendly to what UCF did to them earlier in the season.
Or what Texas State did to them in the first game of the season.
Yeah. I'm not, I can't, it's hard to defend Baylor. But I've just got this vibe from this because we're going to be in definite pissed off mode. So I think we're going to get ours, but I think we're not giving Baylor enough respect. Not that they've earned it, but it's just one of those games. We said the same thing about Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State, and like you said, we didn't have enough film on Oklahoma State because they were going through their quarterback woes. They had just got their heads beat in by Iowa State, and we all consensus thought that they were the worst team in the Big 12, and we go in there and we lay a stinker. That puts on tape that we have stinker ability. Whether we could do that at home, I don't think we will, because we've proven at home we're kind of tough. And that's why I wanted to bring up later. I don't know when we're going to fire into this, but you brought it up, Matt, and I was concerned about it. I don't think the fans have checked out because this is a good season. All in all, it's a good season. But, expectations right now are not being met to where, the team thought they were going to go, road to Arlington, back to back. We wanted that. And it's not out of reach, but it is it's not within arm's reach. So Fort Riley Day, Baylor, not a very good team. At 2 p.m. You said the weather's going to be good. Will it be a, raucous crowd is what I'm worried about. I think the people will be there, but will it be a sleepy game is what I'm kind of getting at. Because we need the energy.
It's not
we
11 a.m.
Yeah,
it's not an 11 a.m. game. So, 2 p.m. I think is it's a great time because people can still go out and tailgate for 5 hours, but people can also get home at a reasonable time too. So, no, I think it's going to be a great crowd. I do. There's 2 home games left. Also, I think the other piece of the pie there is the supply of home games you have left. You got 2 games left. So, I think the last 2 games, the crowds are going to be really great. So yeah, it's going to be a fun atmosphere. I know as a fan and having season tickets and going to the games, we've had some really good crowds this season for, I would say, a good majority. I would say a majority of our games. And I don't think this one is going to be any exception at all.
I agree. I think the crowd's going to be good. 2:00 is a perfect kick time in Manhattan, especially if the weather's going to be great. You mentioned, Chef, that it's not quite the expectations that are being met that we thought we would be aspiring to going into the season, but you still have an opportunity to go 9-3 in the regular season, get 10 wins if you win a bowl game. So you could still get that 10 win, hit that 10 win mark, which would be great. And I think would be a great reflection of what this team is, because this team is a lot better than the losses make it seem like, I think. And especially in retrospect, seeing how much better Missouri is than we thought going into that game, how much better Oklahoma State is now going in than we thought going into that game too. So Arlington is still on the table, but we don't control our own destiny. We need some miracle shit to happen in order for that to happen. And hopefully that does happen, but I'm essentially putting that in the back burner. I'm not worrying about that. Let's go get 10 wins. Let's win a bowl game. Let's win out and head into next season with some great momentum. That's what I want to see.
Yeah, you would love to see that. And I think with this team, these next 3 games, this game included, we don't leave the state of Kansas, which I think is a really cool thing. Coming off of that loss, I think we didn't get the W versus Texas, but going into this game, I think we found some things that we can implement going forward. And I think we'll try to do some of those things versus Baylor. They're a really poor run defense. It's not great. They give up a lot of, on the road, I think the most points that they've scored is 31, and they've given up a ton of points. So it's tough because you want to cruise, but you also got to get warm. You got to get these bodies warmed up for this last 2 games, because two of these 3 games are probably way in the top half of the toughest games that we're going to see all season. So
for sure. I mean, Iowa State and KU are top 4 in the Big 12 right now, top 5.
Yeah, I mean, because there was a 4-way tie for second.
Yep.
4-way tie for second, and KU and Iowa State are both in that category with us.
Yep, and Iowa State has a tiebreaker over Oklahoma State. If Oklahoma State were to lose another game, they would have the tiebreaker over Oklahoma State. So it's a pile up, dude.
Who does Iowa State play this week?
They play Texas.
Oh, Jesus Christ. No, TCU plays Texas.
Oh,
next
shit.
week.
Next week is Texas, Iowa State.
Next week.
Iowa State. I don't know who I guess I could use my.
They play
phone.
BYU at BYU.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus Christ! So
it's a fun one to watch this week.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
But
no, we're talking about BYU. Remember?
Yeah, I want to keep talking Baylor. So as far as just personnel, offense, defense, let's get some of that stuff out of the way, and then we'll go into our predictions. But Chef, you want to tell us a little bit more about your guy Blake Shapen that you love so much?
I think he's
in 2021.
I think he's tough, man. I think he's top half of the league in quarterback, in my opinion. You know, if he had a full season, I think he'd be around 12 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. I think he's serviceable, and with the team that he has around him, it's not highlighting him as much as he should be. I think he's the best player on that team by far. He's gonna throw it in there. He's gonna throw it. That's what they do. They don't run the ball all that much, and they're gonna rely on him. He's not as mobile this season because I think that injury is still lingering around. You know, that knee injury, I think he sprained his MCL or PCL at the beginning of this season, maybe the first game. But he's just tough. And, he's not aesthetically pleasing like Malik Murphy is, like I was gushing about last week. But he's the guy that he's going to haunt me for that 2021 game. You know, we knock out, who was it? Jerry Bohannon, and he rips his hamstring completely off the bone, and that was the end of him. And we bring in, you got this true freshman Blake Chafin coming in. I'm like, oh shit, here we go. Skylar Thompson's about to get the dub. You know, we're about to cause hell for this boy, and he comes in and torches us. I mean, lights us up. Last year, what did he do last year? I knew he threw the pick.
He threw for 203 yards last year, went 22 for 38, but he never saw the end zone.
Yeah, well,
31-3 loss.
31-3 loss. He threw the pick to Kobe. Very nice for Kobe that was like the game Kobe got hurt in. But Blake Chafin's a serviceable guy. He's gonna put them in situations where they can do things. They're gonna throw a lot on first down. And can we shut him down? You know, shut his weapons down, have him, you know, scrambling around. Maybe this is a game for the D line to actually get up on somebody and put some pressure, similar to what we did with Baron Morton and the Hoover kid. And Smith was that was just bad for the boy. It was cold. He wasn't ready for that. I think the weather's going to be nice, so it's going to be weather where you can throw it. So let's just put some pressure on him. But Blake Chafin's serviceable, but I'm not ready to say he can beat K-State by himself. He's not 2021 Blake Chafin.
You saying that he is a top 5 quarterback in the Big 12 really did make me think. And this conference is kind of top heavy with quarterbacks, and there's a bunch of really average quarterbacks right now in the conference, if you think about it.
Where would you put Jason Bean?
Jason Bean's
who's the best quarterback in the Big 12 right now? Right now. Like,
is it still Dylan Gabriel?
Is Dylan Gabriel the best quarterback in the Big 12?
I 3 weeks ago I said that Dylan Gabriel was the favorite for the Heisman, and he's absolutely shit the bed ever since I said that. So I don't know, maybe I should just start throwing that around to people I don't want to do good. You know, Dylan Gabriel's probably top 5. Bean's top 5. Will Howard's top 5. Yeah. This is not in any order. I'm just trying. That's okay, 3. Okay.
You've got 2 more.
Bean, Gabriel. I would say Ewers if he's healthy, but I mean,
no. Like this week he's not playing. So
you sure? Because I think there's he's practicing.
Okay.
But let's say he's hurt. Let's throw him out there. Malik Murphy's not in the
right now. He could return this week potentially.
John Rice Plumlee not in the top 5.
No.
The BYU guy definitely not top 5.
No.
I'd say before
Jones.
Before
Garrett Green.
I don't know.
I think this is like my whole.
But what I'm saying before the K-State, Alan Bowman, you gotta not sleep on that boy, which I would have never said. But before the K-State game, I would have said Donovan Smith's up there. But you know he shit the bed.
What about our boy Rocco up in Ames? Rocco Becht.
No, I can't put him up there. I would say I won't do it. I just won't do it. I'd say Donovan Smith's top 5. And then I would say our boy, Blake Chafin. If he had weapons around him, he would be probably top 4 in order.
Should we talk about
the quarterback play has taken a real sick turn from last season, if you think about it. Like the quarterbacks in this league.
Oh yeah.
Sick U-turn down off the bridge.
Yeah. It's tough.
Okay.
So
Bob.
We are going to talk about the offense and some of the offensive weapons that are around Blake Chapin. So you mentioned some of the guys, obviously Blake Chapin at quarterback, but in their rushing game, they've got Dominic Richardson, whose name we've heard for a while now at Baylor, and then Dawson Pendergrass. I think he's that freshman that you alluded to earlier, Chef. Dominic Richardson, he's currently their leader in rushing yards with 339. He's got 125 receiving yards and 0 touchdowns. So he's definitely not that goal line back that they're going to in the red zone. Granted, they have a horrible red zone offense right now. So they're not getting that many opportunities for Dominic Richardson to even see that pay dirt. But Dawson Pendergrass, he's currently got 275 rushing yards. He's their second leading rusher, 144 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns. He's their leader in rushing touchdowns. Number 2 for them is Blake Shapen with 3. And then as far as their receivers, they've got Monterey Baldwin. That's a name we've heard before. And then a name we hadn't heard before is Drake Dabney. I don't remember him from last year at all, but he's a wide receiver, 347 yards. He's their leader in touchdowns right now with 4. Monterey Baldwin's their receiving yards leader with 586 in 3 touchdowns. But do any of those guys scare you? How scared are you about the weapons around Baylor's offense, knowing that Hal Presley hasn't really been a factor? I think he's been injured for most of the season as well. But what do you think about Baylor's offense?
Baldwin does spook me. He's a shifty little. He reminds me of Phillip Brooks. He's fast as lightning. He does pose some problems. I don't think he's nearly as talented as like a Xavier Worthy or at A.D. Mitchell. So I'm going into. I always think of it like this way: like if a DB like is lined up versus Xavier Worthy for that entire game, and then he lines up against Baylor's, like, what am I doing here? Like, these guys stink compared to what we just saw in Texas. So will it be a vacation for them? I don't know. I think they're still D1 athletes, so they can pop up at any moment and drop 110 on you, and if we're not prepared. But I mean, there's not a lot of weapons that spook me. I mean, their running backs really bad. I mean,
I would venture to guess that every team we've played so far this season, with the exception of SEMO because they're FCS, is better in offensive success rate and rushing success rate than Baylor is, based on the fact that Baylor's 103rd in the country right now in offensive success rate, and they're 113th in rushing success rate.
I bet Houston's got a worse rushing success rate than they do.
Rushing, yeah, but offensive success rate, that's kind of their bread and butter. Houston's bread and butter is the passing game for sure. But
yeah,
what do you think, Matt?
Oh man. Well, as you said, a lot of K-State fans will probably hear the name Dominic Richardson, and it rings a bell with his time at Oklahoma State. Which I do find that interesting that he transferred to Baylor. I completely forgot that he did until you mentioned that. But I think always the big worry is going to be the passing game and what wide receivers are going to be able to do. I mean, we did see against Texas, especially in that first half, our quarterbacks got cooked in some plays. And so if Baylor can find some opportunities to get some big plays over the cornerbacks, over the safeties, I'm gonna get some of these guys open, like a Monterey Baldwin, Drake Dabney. Yeah, that could make the game more interesting if the secondary is not playing at a good level in this game. I think that we could say that for a lot of the games that we've played this season. The secondary has to really be in good shape for all these games, or it just seems like there's a star wide receiver or a number 1 wide receiver is going to get his opportunities. So I do think that's the key, since our rushing defense has been pretty solid. I'm not necessarily expecting their running backs like Richardson or Dawson Pendergrass to get 150 yards on the ground, but I mean, it's all going to be interesting to see what the game plan is on the Baylor side.
I'm shocked that a guy that we saw last year that was maybe a true freshman last year, Richard Reese. I mean, he ran the ball a couple times last year versus us, He popped off for a 100-yard game versus UCF, and then we just don't see him anymore.
He's nowhere to be found lately.
And I would love to have a Baylor guy on here explain to me what's happening with that situation, because he was kind of the heir apparent coming into this season before they brought in Richardson at that running back room. And, they used to have like a dominant offensive line, and that's just not what's happening anymore. They're just not as big. They're just not as physical. And they used to have tight ends. What was the tight end last year or maybe the year before that when they won the Big 12, he's just a big body. I think his last name was Sims, but they just don't have a tight end like that anymore that scares you in the middle, that is a matchup nightmare. They just don't have guys that are matchup nightmares like a lot of these Big 12 teams have, that you have to scheme for them. Me and you, Matt, we talked about scheming guys, either scheming them up offense or scheming guys on defense to shut them down and doing your game plan around there. They just don't have a lot of the bodies that scare you that you would have to scheme around. So I don't know if we're going to see a lot of base defense from us where we're just like, keeping everything simple and forcing them to have to do something crazy to beat us. So, it's just tough sledding at Baylor right now. It's tough. It's just tough times in Waco.
It is. And looking quickly at the defense, this is one of the things that's most fascinating to me about Baylor is Dave Aranda came in as a defensive-minded coach. He was that defensive coordinator for that LSU national championship team, and by all accounts, a lockdown defense, right? We saw that team in 2020, and they were dominant, really in all facets of the game. But he's got a first-year defensive coordinator this year, and the numbers don't look a whole lot better than the guy they got rid of last year. They're 90th in defensive success rate. They're 88th in passing and 94th in rush. They're dead last in FBS in points per quality possession. So points over equal rate. So when they get quality, or when they're defending against quality possessions on defense, they are dead last in FBS in allowing points on those possessions, which is nuts to me.
What does that stat mean? I'm just not smart enough to know what that even stat means. Like, how do you?
That's why we would need Parker here to decipher that. But think quality possession, like it's a good possession, not a bad possession.
Okay, so wouldn't everybody's stats be down versus quality possessions? Like, you're allowing the quality possession. How do you have?
If I'm just spitballing here, I would say a possession where you take over on your own 5-yard line is not a quality possession.
Okay, so it's about field position then.
Potentially. I don't know. I don't know enough about this stat to say, but they're dead last in that on defense.
Okay.
Not good. Not good. They're giving up 29.4 points per game. And when you look at the teams that they've given up points to, Cincinnati, I want to point this out because Cincinnati's last place in the Big 12. And the most points that Cincinnati has scored on any opponent, win or loss this season in FBS, was against Baylor.
God damn. That's not
the most points Cincinnati scored against anybody was 66 points against Eastern Kentucky. But they scored 27 in a win against Pitt, and they've lost every other game. And this is the most points they scored against any opponent was against Baylor.
That's not good.
It's not great for Baylor. They're 104th also in just total yards allowed in the country at 421.5 per game. So their defense is just not great. It's really like a bottom third of all of FBS in most statistical categories, which is kind of nuts. So when we're talking predictions, when we're talking about what the offense can do in this game, and when you look at K-State, we've talked about it all season, or at least the last couple of games, K-State's like a top 15, top 20 offense in SP plus and in all of the offensive efficiency metrics. And so, again, going back to what Matt was saying earlier in the pod, when you look at the advanced stats preview and you look at what K-State's bringing to the table on Parker Fleming's stats of war thing, it's all blue. Baylor is all red, and the defense is in some cases worse than the offense, which isn't saying a whole lot for Baylor.
I gotta clean something up. I was talking about the tight end not having a tight end. And that Dabney guy that you said we never heard of, he's actually a transfer tight end. And so he's the leading touchdown receiver for Baylor, and he's actually a tight end. So that is a goof by me that he's actually their best receiver.
Yo, Shep knows ball.
If I'm wrong, I'm gonna.
He is listed as a receiver on ESPN, so easy mix up there.
Drake Dabney. He is a 6'5", 248-pound senior, and he's got 4 touchdowns this year. He's so be it.
Yeah, he's leading in touchdowns.
But defensively, Matt, I got a question for you. Okay,
hit me.
Will Howard's rocking. The Avery Johnson experiment has gone many different ways this year. How do we address that going into this game? They're not very good against the run. They're not very good against the pass either. But this is kind of those games where you can get experience for, an Avery Johnson versus a Big 12 opponent. Do we want to leave it to garbage time? Do we want, if we get to garbage time, do we want him in part of the game? Is he still part of the game plan, taking Will Howard off the field and putting Avery Johnson in there with how well Will Howard's playing?
I mean, I think the past 2 weeks have shown that Will is leading this thing. And if there are opportunities to get Avery on the field, I mean, sure, but I just don't see. I'm not going to say a need, but my feeling is this: Will has shown the past 2 weeks that he's the unquestioned. I'm just saying.
I'm laughing at myself. Sorry, that Dabney kid's not a transfer either. So
I think Will has shown he's the unquestioned leader of this team. We love seeing Avery Johnson on the field just because we know of what he can bring, but we're not at I don't feel like we're at a point right now where we're going on potential. We need to be like, we have 3 games that we have to win, and you want the best guy who's going to be able to lead this team on the field at all times. And there's no doubt during the Texas game, when the first 2 drives went awry, you're like, okay, I mean, maybe we got to get Avery Johnson on the field. And then we figured out, maybe the play calling wasn't great on that drive. I'll give you that. Or I can believe that. But he was not the problem that we saw. And you saw Will come back in and just really, grinded it out. So I hope we see Avery Johnson in the late third quarter, fourth quarter scenario, because we're up a lot of points is what I hope on Saturday.
So do you feel the same way, Bob? I mean, because I still think there's a place for him in this offense. I think there's, Will has to know at this point that he's the unquestioned leader. I think we all know that, but I still think that he has to realize that Avery Johnson's a talent, and the offense still has some explosiveness with him in it, where we want to get him. He's already burnt that red shirt. That red shirt's gone.
Yeah.
So there's no why waste it for garbage time? Let's get him in the game, but it's just a balancing act. So do you think the same as Matt? Like,
I wouldn't hate to see a similar game plan to the Tech or the TCU games where we saw maybe not alternating drives with Will and Avery, but we give Avery a lot of really good in-game experience, and it's not just in garbage time. because for me, you've burnt his red shirt, like you said. He's not getting that back. So we want to capitalize on as much of Avery Johnson this season as we can, while also taking advantage of the fact that this could be Will's last year. Who knows if it is or if it isn't. But you've also got two massive matchups the next 2 weeks for Will, where Will is going to be the guy who's probably going to be relied upon for 2 wins there. If we're going to win those 2 games, I think Will Howard needs to have 2 of the biggest games of his career the next 2 weeks. And so if we're going to maximize on Avery's potential this season, I think it has to happen in this game, because I don't know how much we're going to see him in the game against Iowa State or the game against KU, because similar to Texas last week, that's going to be 2 tough matchups where unless we're putting him in to be a game breaker and we scheme something up, I think Will Howard's going to be the guy that we need to rely upon for those 2 wins if we're going to get those 2 wins, in my opinion.
I agree. I think it's both ways. I'm gonna middle and just say I think Avery needs a series once every other quarter, and if that means that he's taken over in garbage time in the fourth quarter, fine. But I think in the second quarter, I think he needs a series here when the game's within 17, 14 points.
All right, let's do score predictions and Chef's recipe for success. Chef, what's your recipe for success against Baylor?
Man, you got to some of those days in the kitchen, you would just have to forget that dinner service. It was either it was good or it was bad, because that next service is totally different. You're going to have totally different people coming in there. There might be a catering event that you have to do in the middle of the service, but you can't remember that last burnt pizza that you put in the oven and try to serve it. You can't remember that one. It was a tough day, but the next day you got to bring your A game and have the best dining experience for the people that come into that restaurant. So for K-State, you were this close versus Texas. This close. I'll show how close you were. You were this close. Are you about to go to a restaurant? Matt, are you trying to find a restaurant?
Yeah.
Welcome to Chili's. I'm Fireball Matt. I'll be your server today.
Yeah.
So for me,
could I interest you in a 2-for-1 margarita?
Ooh, Dollaritas at Applebee's.
Triple dipper.
Ooh, my God.
I love a triple dipper at Chili's. It's good shit.
That looks like that's not a restaurant. Definitely not a restaurant. But
you're our private chef.
Oh, okay. That's not exactly where I was going with this one, but we could do that too. But we got to forget that game. It's flushed. We said it for the wins and we said it for the losses. We said it after the big win versus Tech and the big win versus TCU going into that Houston game. We have to flush it. Those games are done. And after a loss, you got to flush this one too. And we've got to handle our business. Matt, you've been hammering that all night, that we have to handle business, because there's another one coming up on the schedule that's just as important as this one. But this one's the most important. And I think K-State, if our mind is right, we're going to dominate this game. Everything points to that. And the only way we can do that is if we're not thinking about Texas and letting them beat us twice.
What's your score prediction?
Oh, I'm going first? Okay, that's fine. I got the score 40-14. That's 4 touchdowns and 4 field goals. So I think Will Howard has a 3 touchdown performance. He breaks the all-time record for touchdowns at K-State throwing. He's honored on his way off the field as Avery, takes over for going into the fourth quarter. And we're very happy. 40-14 Cats.
40-14 Cats. What do you have, Matt?
I have 41-17, a little bit more of a conventional score, I guess. But I mean, I think of this game pretty similarly to the Houston game, and it's definitely going to be just the mindset of it's one game at a time. Baylor has shown some capability to make some things competitive against some teams this season. So you can't, again, as you said, you can't take a second loss after that Texas game. You can't let the Texas loss bleed into a new game. And I feel good about the coaching staff and instilling that thought process in this team. And so I'm going 41-17, Kansas State.
Yeah, that's you're perfect with that. That's absolutely right. You can't let Texas bleed into this game, especially we had a Houston preview not too long ago where the guy said it's hard to get up for 3 straight games. So having Texas right here bleed into this one after a tough loss and slightly looking ahead to your biggest rival. I mean, this could be set up for something spicy, but Baylor is really bad. But go ahead, Bobby.
I'm going to go 37-15 Cats. Very unconventional score. I think there's just some weird shit that happens. Baylor's going to get a touchdown and go for 2 and get 8 points. They'll have 2 touchdowns. And you know where I'm getting this from? This because the advanced stats preview that Parker Fleming put out had K-State winning 36.53 points to 14.75 points. So 37-15 Cats. But I agree. This team and this coaching staff, if they've proven anything, they always get up for that next game after a loss. That goes back the entire stretch of the Kleiman era. There's probably a couple times during that COVID season where we had back-to-back losses, but really outside of that, there has not been a situation where this team has lost 2 straight games outside of the COVID year, really, it feels like. So maybe there are, and maybe I'm just not thinking of them, but I like the Cats' chances this week. And with that, let's get to our locks.
Am I first?
No, I'm first because I won, but you've got something to do there, bag boy.
Okay, everybody. Everybody on the YouTube. So if everybody would like, I could turn my camera off. So I am in West Houston right now. And
is it West Houston or west of Houston?
West of Houston, same thing. And I went to Walmart and I found a bag that I think really fits for today. Merry Christmas.
Oh my God.
Because Walmart does not sell paper bags. So here we go.
We are still almost 2 months out from Christmas, by the way.
You ripped the face off of that penguin and gutted him for the eyes. That is disgusting.
You know what?
You're a sick puppy.
It's a sad day to be a penguin.
Sad day to be a Youngstown State Penguin.
Yeah, but as far as season standings are concerned, after last week, your commissioner went 4-1 on the week, and I took the week. I'm sitting in first place right now with a 25-25 record overall, sitting at 500, and along with me, tied for first at 500, is Fireball Matt, who is 24-24-2. So with his 2 pushes, he's still at a 500 record overall. And Andre's locks are in their rightful place in last with a 23-25-2 record overall. Not too far off, only 1 game behind Matt, but still in last place. Honorable mention this week goes to Allison Renner, who was our guest co-host last week. She went 3-2 on the week, and that Air Force game, I'm still thinking about that Air Force score. That was kind of a wild prediction. But getting into week 11 for Bob's locks, I have for my Big 12 picks, I've got Houston versus Cincinnati. I'm taking Houston -2.5. Cincinnati is 1-6 against the spread in their last 7 games, and Houston is 4-1 against the spread at home in their final 5 matchups. So give me the Cougs this weekend against the Cincinnati Bearcats. I'm taking BYU plus 6.5 versus Iowa State. They're going to get the upset against the Iowa State Cyclones. BYU is 4-0 at home this year, and I think they can at least make it a contest, maybe still lose in a close matchup, but still cover. And BYU in night games is like 27-3 or 27-4 in night games since the year 2020. So the BYU Vampires are going to be out on Saturday at 8:15 p.m. Mountain Time. That's 10:15 Chef's time in the nighttime. I'm taking the KU Jayhawks in the next matchup against the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Minus 3.5 for the Hawks. They're 5-0 at the booth this season. Hopefully that ends next week against the Cats. And Tech is 1-3 on the road. So I'm taking the Squawks in that matchup. Blue Wings rising. I'm moving on to my national game of the week. I'm taking the Arizona Wildcats, the not so incumbent Wildcats of the future Big 12, minus 10.5 at the Colorado Buffaloes. Arizona's 8-1 against the spread this season and 3-1 against the spread on the road. I like the Cats against the Buffs in this one. And then Rutgers in my sicko game. I'm taking Rutgers plus 1.5 at Iowa at Kinnick. Rutgers is 6-1-2 against the spread this season, and they're 2-0-1 against the spread on the road. Iowa's 4-4-1 against the spread. So this is going to be an icky, disgusting sicko matchup. Rutgers also has the 20th best defense in scoring defense in the nation. So Iowa might not even score in this matchup if we're just being perfectly honest. So I'm taking the Fighting Greg Schianos, and you might just want to stay away from the locker rooms after the game if Greg Schiano's going to be there.
Oh, my God. Okay, Matt's locks of the week as a Penguin. So, it's a tasty Big 12 slate, but it's not tasty for betting. There's a lot of games that I feel like are going to be pretty, I think it's not going to be great. So I mocked 2 of Bob's, but because I truly believe in them. Houston is definitely beating Cincinnati, which means they're going to lose probably. But I think Houston's definitely going to beat Cincinnati. And I think BYU is going to cover the 6.5 against Iowa State in Provo, which should be an interesting matchup, a late night Pac-12 after dark, even in the Big 12, whatever. I'm in a Penguin bag. And then, so my third one, I think UCF is upsetting Oklahoma State this weekend. I think the Bounce House is going to be celebrating a top 15 win against Oklahoma State this weekend. I don't know. I just have a feeling, which is probably going to be wrong. My national game of the week, Missouri. They're hosting Tennessee this weekend, and they're a 1.5-point underdog. I think Brady Cook is going to get the Tigers a nice little victory this weekend. And then my sicko game of the week, Georgia State at home, 2.5-point favorites against Appalachian State. Did you know Appalachian State's in North Carolina? I bet you didn't, but they are.
Boone, North Carolina.
Yeah, I did know that.
Boone.
Shout out to Luke Combs.
Pandering to the listeners, Bob. If you didn't learn anything on this show today, just figured out you learned the Appalachian Mountains go through North Carolina. But anyway, Georgia State and Clay Helton's team, they're winning against the Appalachian State, whatever their mascots are.
Mountaineers.
Of fucking course they would be.
Mountaineers.
Copycats.
Let's go Mountaineers. All right. So this is my my last straw. This is my last one. This is my last chance. I'm gonna just go oppo taco of everything you guys just said.
Oh,
especially Matt. So whatever you guys got written down, I got the Clones minus 6.5 versus stinky BYU. Cosmo is going to be looking for a new job. that shit is done. It's over, baby. He's going to be actually setting himself on fire after this game. Cincinnati on the road in a barren wasteland of Houston. You thought the Queen City was bad? Go down to Houston. It's tough. I got Cincinnati pulling off the upset in Houston. H-Town, Paul Wall, where you at? Then I got Oklahoma State. The dream season continues. When you thought you buried those damn Pokes, they rise from the dead. This line is just stinky. You mean to tell me UCF, who couldn't stop shit, is going to stop Heisman winner Ollie Gordon? Not a fucking chance. He might run for 3 bills. Give me Oklahoma State. Easiest pick of the... That's just the easiest one I've ever seen. My top 25 matchup. I mean, when I was a kid, you had, this was the matchup. I would want to watch this game because I knew there were a bunch of thugs running around, killing each other, probably in a monsoon. Miami versus Florida
I knew
State.
you were going to say Miami.
Miami versus Florida State. Miami just got spanked by a NC State team with a quarterback that didn't even want to play for them anymore. Come on, he entered a transfer portal right after the game. So you mean to tell me Travis isn't going to beat them by 100? Give me Florida State minus 14.5 in one of the best rivalry games of all time, Miami versus Florida State. Then my sicko game. You would think, Andre, you always go to the MAC, Sun Belt, whatever. That's easy. Let's go to the SEC. We got Vanderbilt versus South Carolina, who reeks. They got their head coach kicking shit, breaking his big toe. He's nothing like his daddy. He's a failure. Give me Vanderbilt plus 13.5. You were talking about North Carolina. I'm talking South Carolina. Shithole. Let's go Vanderbilt. Commodores. Doors up.
So you're taking every team you're taking is on the road this week.
Damn right.
I love the energy, if nothing else. I will not be tailing that bet. Not with real money.
Wait till I go 5.
I'm almost thinking about putting $5 on that and seeing what I can do.
That would be insane if all of those hit.
I'm gonna work that parlay real quick while we set up for the end of this.
You do that. And with that, we are going to finish up the podcast tonight. Chef, did you end up doing your calculations there on the parlay before we?
That boy has been set up. It's ready to go. $5 wins you $127 plus 2,444 odds. Let's go.
And a quick correction: Florida State is not on the road; they're playing at home versus Miami. But Chef said Miami versus Florida State, so I was in the wrong there. But for all of us at Cocaine Willie, thanks for listening to the show on your podcast feeds or watching us on YouTube. Do us a favor: if you're listening on Apple or Spotify podcast, leave us a 5-star rating. Follow the show, and if you're watching on YouTube, give us a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. Even if you're not a K-State fan, you can follow our locks or not follow any of our locks. You can follow the show, though, on Twitter or Instagram or follow us individually. I am at Bob Trollsby. Chef is at Chef Andre Napier, and Fireball Matt is at Matt Marchesini. Chef.
We're all handsome in here, but cocaine's a hell of a drug, man.
We're all handsome and no joke. Wildcat Country.
Big Nick energy.
Yo, he's wearing a Furby.
Oh my God! You don't talk.